Good? Okay, so...
that ring.
Oh,
Right,
you
flying
want me to flip it?
No,
No,
that's
it's
okay,
awesome.
that is fine. I don't really matter. Right, Jenna?
Not even a little bit. But I still love you. Oh, more food.
You said I could eat with it.
I know, I'm giving you a lot of hard times because you're eating so much fruit and great things. Like, he brought a huge bag of hard-boiled eggs. He's just a guy. Like, I put him on a diet. He's like, I can have a hard-boiled egg? I'll have 30. I'll have all the hard-boiled eggs.
All that are possible.
Yep, I'll leave everything. I can have a piece of bacon? I'll eat all the bacon.
Got it.
This is Logan Levkoff. She is the master of all things relationship and sexuality and interpersonal connection. Did I miss anything, or I pretty much covered all of it?
I don't know. That's a very nice intro you just gave me. I'm not sure that's factual.
Whatever. Are you kidding? We do 4 hours. Like, I don't know. Half of this stuff is factual. Lance keeps telling me he ran the New York City Marathon. That may or may not even be true.
I can send you a picture.
I'd rather not, but we'll play that game another time.
How many times are you going to bring up the fact that I ran
That
the
was the
marathon?
last one. That was actually the last
How many times did you bring it up today?
Right now, 12. Fact check me.
Yes.
Like we're so used to, I never even heard the term fact check before until our candidate started running. But fact check me a little bit and tell me what I've said right and wrong.
Okay. Well, I am a sexologist and sexuality educator, so you're not wrong.
Love it. I have so many questions. Where do I even start?
At the beginning, I suppose. And I deal with everything from childhood and adolescent sexuality to parent-child stuff to interpersonal grown-up stuff, but all under the umbrella of sexuality. So I like to say I'm not a therapist, I'm an educator, so I make the everyday issues accessible to everyone.
So do you have like clients? Like how do you reach people?
So I design and implement the sex ed programs in a lot of the independent schools in Manhattan and the tri-state areas.
Get out of here.
I do, guilty.
Cool job.
So I work with kids and teens most of my days, but I write, so I've done a bunch of parenting books and I lecture. I'm on faculty at the University of Michigan in their sexual health certificate program, and
It's University of Michigan Day. over
Yeah, it
here,
is.
by the
Or
way.
oh, is it really? That's so funny. I mean, I didn't go there. I'm just a professor.
I'm not going to fact check you. As a Harvard grad, what we don't do is fact check anybody.
Cool. That
So,
works.
There you go.
And then I get to do a couple of things, wild and crazy things in the media, which is
Amazing.
fun. Rounds it all out.
How complicated has sex become today? I mean, I don't even know whether, even if you started last year, I would say it's more complicated than it used to be. But I mean, I just feel like it's getting
Well, it's funny. I don't think it's complicated.
among
as
teens.
much.
Oh, sorry.
Well, as
with adolescents, aren't they so much more advanced than they were? Do they know so much more?
not really. That's the truth.
Oh.
I think that we like to have these giant sensationalistic headlines, like everything is going wrong with teens and it's your fault.
Yeah.
You curb it now. But that's not been my experience. Yes, they're exposed to a lot of different things than we were, and they've access to pornography, and they're, taking pictures of themselves and sending them back and forth to each other. But really, developmentally, it's really no different than what we had. They just have access to it in the palm of their hands. Like, I often tell anyone that I talk to, this whole concept of sexting, it's not really a huge shock that people use technology, because do you remember the chat lines that people used to call the 1-800 numbers when you get the bill at the end of the month?
Yeah.
Like, your parents are like, $20,000, what were you doing? I mean, we experimented with that the same way. I was saying some pretty wild things on those chat lines because it was my way of sort of testing out my sexuality and expressing it without actually having to do anything. So it's not a real surprise, but we just need to be super clear with our young people about what our expectations are.
So what's changed? Is it the way we talk to kids that's changed, or if it's not the information that they're
Well,
getting?
I think we tend to rely on other sources a lot now because everything is so accessible.
Hold on. For example, when I came out, I didn't know how to do it.
Right.
I watched an episode of The Golden Girls, and Blanche's friend hit on Rose and used the word intriguing. I'm very intrigued by you. So I didn't know, and no one told me, so I thought the word intriguing meant that's how you hit on another woman. So I hit on another woman by using the word, I'm very intrigued by you.
But by the way, that's
She
a
didn't know.
very super sexy intellectual move to
Yeah.
make. So
No idea what I was talking about. She thanked me and walked away.
Right.
Just FYI. Anyway.
Was that the first time you ever heard the word intriguing?
That was the first time I ever heard the word thanks, but no thanks. Let's put it that way.
Touche.
But isn't that part of life too, right?
The best part.
The learning process.
Ah, the learning curve is the most beautiful, sexy thing.
Yes. Oh,
Not
yes.
at the time, but always afterwards.
No, I always tell everyone, my own children included, rejection sucks, but it doesn't stop when you're a teenager, and they just
Okay, so now we're getting into some
learn
good
and
stuff,
grow
so I'm
from
gonna take this
it.
back off again because I already love you, Logan. So we got a lot to discuss.
All right, sounds good.
So it's. Do you talk to kids differently? I mean, I would imagine your job has changed over the years, and I guess I'm just curious how.
You know, has my job changed? I think that I'm forced to talk about things in a different way. You know, I think that when I was in high school, middle school, we never talked about pornography. I mean, we never talked about any LGBT issues. I mean,
Right.
so I think the fact that we're so diverse and our world is so much more inclusive, at least in certain areas,
Right.
you know, it gives me the opportunity to teach more critical thinking skills as it relates to the world around them. I would do it in any other place in the country or around the world too. I think that they see much more in their world, so to stick our heads in the sand and pretend like they don't see it is silly to me.
How early are you supposed to start having that conversation?
Birth.
See, I'm already dreading it. Like, I'm already dreading it. So my older one is 3.
Mm-hmm.
So she picks up our bra and she's like, your
Yeah.
boobies, boobies. Like, she knows boobies. And she was like in the bath and she was like, she had her Barbie doll and she was like, oh, my Barbie's touching my pee-pee. I'm like, what? Well, I can't hear you. I must go. Like, I was like, what kind of reaction was that? Like, that was not even a real human reaction.
Well, it is a real human reaction. That's the truth of it. So, you know, when I say birth, I really mean
You need
birth.
to really start.
And because I think that we get so tripped up with this word sexuality that it's about intercourse or various forms of penetration. And I mean, it's not. It's about who we are and how we express ourselves in our body. And I think the more we take ownership of that, the better off we are. I mean, now granted, my kids are sex ed guinea pigs, so there's nothing funnier than my daughter at 2 or 3 in a dressing room with my mother saying like, oh, Go, you have a vulva too? I have
Stop
a vulva.
it.
Yeah.
Stop it.
I mean, because my mom did not, I have amazing parents who were super welcoming about all things, but they certainly didn't use the word vulva.
Right.
I'm not going to lie, that was not part of the vocabulary.
Right.
Or you
So-
have a vulva also?
Shock. My friends say the men are like, it's like the foyer into
Right.
the vagina.
Ah.
So are you supposed to call it by the real name? You're
You
supposed
are.
to call it the vagina.
Look, it's a personal preference for me. I like the language police.
Yeah.
And there are a few reasons for it. I mean, one, I think it's an equity issue. I have a son and a daughter, and you know, even if I never taught any boys I ever worked with the right term penis, and they used slang all the time, they still walk around going like, I have a penis, you have a penis.
Right.
Have you seen a penis?
Yeah.
And they have the language. But plenty of girls and women don't grow up with an understanding of their bodies. And I mean, think of what that's like when we have like one particular sex, like understanding their body and one having no idea.
Yeah.
And then of course having universal language is good, because if something goes wrong, we can identify it.
Yeah.
And you know, if we want something pleasure related, then we can identify it. But if we just sort of use slang or ignore parts, I don't think it's helpful.
So be open, talk about it early on, get the awkwardness out of the way.
Yeah, and look, sexuality is this amazing and wonderful part of our lives. And I think the more we recognize that, the easier all the other things become later on. I mean, we talk about consent at home all the time. As soon as my kids could speak, we talk about consent with respect to giving permission. And, you know, did you ask your sister to borrow your hairbrush? You need her permission. I mean, we have this hysterical story once where my daughter must have been 4 or 5. And my partner came around and he, you know, squeezed her butt. She looks up and says, Daddy, you did not ask me for my permission or consent to squeeze my butt. And he looked at her and said, Memphis, you are absolutely right. May I please squeeze your butt? And she said, yes, you may.
Oh my God, I love it.
But again, think about how much
Yep.
easier it is to have that language now,
Yep.
that script, instead of waiting for that miraculous time when they're 16 or 17 and now they're going to start talking like this. It's hard to do.
How many kids?
2.
How old?
I have a 6th grade son, Maverick, and a 2nd grade daughter, Memphis, so 11 and 7. We call this the year of craps.
Why?
7-11.
Oh, 7-11.
You never know.
Gotcha. So I have a 20-month-old and a 3-year-old. They're both girls. There's a lot of girls in our house. And Stephanie is far more open, I guess, because when we were little, my parents came up with the most ridiculous names for our body parts.
Yeah.
In Stephanie's household, it was a vagina and a penis, and that's all it was. Like, I'm almost embarrassed to tell you, but I'll tell you because these aren't even real words. Like, our girl part was a poopsie, and the boy's part was a peepanooper. Like, I don't even know what
peepanooper?
that is.
That's a new one. I have to say,
Oh.
I've not heard of.
So, if my mom's watching, it's going to be hilarious. But I think that sort of kept me from, diving into the adult conversation
Sure.
because I was always kept like as a kid, like at the baby table with the baby information, So,
But isn't that a great way to connect with your children at some point to say, you know what, my parents never talked to me this way, and I have great parents, and if you do great, if you don't, that's what they do, and to be able to say, I want to do it a little bit differently,
right?
I didn't learn anything like this. I mean, granted, I am a sexuality educator because I came home after school in the 10th grade and there were 2 condoms and 2 bananas sitting on our dinner table, and my parents were like,
no, they didn't.
Oh yes, they're like, well, it was this blip in time where people were talking about HIV as this indiscriminate virus, and my parents had 2 condoms and 2 bananas and said, this is how you use a condom. Next week you start peer training to become an HIV and AIDS educator. Okay. And I said,
wow. And do you have siblings?
25 years later, here I am. Yes, I have a sister too.
And did she pick up on all this as well?
Yes, she did.
She's doing the same thing, but on the
Well, she's not.
Wait,
she's
are we allowed to have
actually in
bananas
food
on the
world.
diet?
Yes. Why wouldn't you be able to?
I just wanted to make sure, because that actually probably would be helpful.
A banana? Why couldn't you have a banana? It's fruit.
I don't
One
know. I
ingredient.
wasn't sure. It was like texture-wise, it was like similar to a potato.
I love that we're talking about condoms and bananas and you're hungry.
Like,
Welcome to Lance. I'm going to be all over the place and pivot because I have you.
Pivot,
for a
another
limited number of
election
time.
word. Very nice.
Yeah,
that was
did
a
you
nice
see-
pivot. That was a good
Did you see
pivot.
where? Did you see that Saturday Night Live pivot part? That was really funny.
It's the body
He's like,
language.
and that is how you pivot. A huge topic of discussion with 100% of my girlfriends. Not like 80%, 100%. It's always the same thing. So if you think I'm talking about you, I'm not, because all my friends. He wants to have sex all the time. She's in her 40s. Couldn't be bothered. Wants no part of it. Does not want it all the time. It leads to fighting, and then they come to me. And I'm like, I don't know how I could possibly give you any advice. I'm in the worst possible position to give you advice, except that I'm in my 40s. But without
that's
a
like
husband.
your friend coming to me for marriage advice.
Yeah, that was really good. Lance has been divorced 3 times with 27 children. So what's the deal with it? I know we must have very lower libidos. Women in their 40s, they have to.
So
how do you handle a situation like
it's a little bit tricky because some of it could be hormonal and stage of life issues, and then there's another piece of it, which is that when you grow up not feeling like you're entitled to sex and prioritizing pleasure for decades, at some point, you know what happens? You lose interest. You forget that it's a priority until years later when you go, oh my God, what happened to all those years that I wasted?
Right.
Some of it is our own issues, quite frankly, right? I mean, recognizing that sex is important and connection is important. I mean, you don't just want a roommate, you want to have an intimate connection with someone else too. It's about feeling good about our bodies, right? I mean, if we don't feel good about ourselves, we check out. And I think there's something else to it. I often, when I work with partners and spouses, I'll say, how many times, and yes, sweeping generalization I'm making, but if you are female, and even if you are not a stay-at-home mom, how many times do people touch you during the day? All day long, right? There's someone touching you, groping at you. Just take a mental break for a minute and think about how many times you are groped or grabbed by other people, right? For many men, think about how many times they're touched during the day. Never, right? So for us, if I'm, cleaning up the dishes and, my husband comes over and it's the person I love and he finds me sexy and he puts his arms around me, my brain doesn't read that as, oh, that's the person I really want to be with. It's another set of hands.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a hard thing to communicate with someone
It's a
else.
really interesting dynamic that I've never thought about that way.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a hard thing. Sometimes and we're all guilty of it at some point with partners, but sometimes I'll say, watch how many times someone invades my personal space in some way, shape, or form in the next hour.
I totally get that.
Right? You could be in the
Totally get
bathtub
that.
and all of a sudden, the door's open and the
Yep.
question will be, where did you put my socks?
Yeah.
Did you not just see your father, outside the door?
Yeah, right.
It's my, 5 minutes of private time.
All of it.
Yeah.
All of it. I mean, I do the most intimate things, and my kid is right there. I'm like, do you mind? Seriously. And Steph! Come on!
I had this great moment once, years ago, where I was in the bathroom, and it was a Saturday morning, and I needed, maybe 90 seconds. 90 seconds. And my little one walks in, like, opens the door. I'm starving. And I just looked at her and said, do you not see me sleep? And so my big one comes in behind and says, do you have to put in a tampon? And I looked at him and I said, actually, I really do. Can I have 2 minutes? He's like, no problem. Man, I'll get you breakfast. And I thought, I must have done something right in this world.
Somewhere. Unlike my kids who come in, they're like, you wearing a diaper? I'm like, it's not a diaper. I'm like, why am I even explaining this? You barely speak English. Get out.
But that's at 3, or that's okay.
Well, that's the
You know, if it was at like 10, I would say,
Yeah,
well,
a little bit
maybe I have some work to do.
So what's the answer? Do you give in to the guy just to make him happy? Do you know?
Well, first of all, you know,
stand up for
pleasure and orgasms typically beget more pleasure and orgasms. When you have a fulfilling experience, you realize, why has it been so long since I did that? Or
Right.
we did that. And it's I don't want to think of it as so much about giving in, but it's about really prioritizing the intimate side of your relationship. And that doesn't mean that every time like one is in the mood and someone isn't, that you always have to give in. But it's also about doing the little things. I mean, think about how routine our lives get. That when's the last time you really kissed your partner?
I can't tell you.
Right? You do like the
That was a
obligatory
rhetorical
peck on
question.
the cheek or kiss, and everyone
Yeah.
goes about their day, and we talk at each other. But there really isn't a lot of intimacy, and I think that if we connected more on those levels, it would make, you know, explicit acts of sex more agreeable to us. You know, we would want to do those things because we've been supporting the foundation of our relationship instead of just kind of going through the motions. And again, even as a professional, we're all guilty of it.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of it in parts of my life too.
Are there trends in relationships and sexuality and all of it that you see, like, you know, the last couple years, it's always the men want to have sex and the women don't, or no one wants to have sex, it's all oral. It's like, I don't even know.
Well, I mean, we're definitely seeing more men not interested in sex too, and you know that comes from just stress, and you know sometimes it's biological, and we don't, you know, we tend to have the stereotype of the women wanting to say no, but you know there are plenty of men who are sort of feeling like, not sure I'm interested either. And I think that what colors every single experience, regardless of gender, sex, or orientation, is just, am I normal? Is our sex life normal? How do I measure up to someone else? And this idea that we even use the word normal just is really
It's terrible.
bad.
It shouldn't be the barometer
all of us.
Right. It doesn't even mean anything.
Right, because at the end of the day, if you are being fulfilled, and I don't care if it's in one position once a week, and you know, in between the Real Housewives commercial break, like if that works for you and your partner, good for you.
Right.
You know, if someone else is having sex more or less, like that's their issue, not yours.
Do you like talking about this?
Well, seeing as I do it for a living,
But it looks like you really enjoy talking about it.
yes, I do. And you know, I was raised to clearly have a big mouth, right? I was my favorite story of all time was that I was a model congress, like debating. I'm not going to use the word geek because I say it with love and admiration, but I was at Cornell Model Congress, and this is 1992, in this giant room with like hundreds of students and faculty, and it was a gay marriage bill. And so imagine, I mean, 1992, no one was speaking up for gay marriage. And someone said, does anyone want to speak pro? And so I raised my hand and I said, I will. And so I stood up in front of the whole group and I proceeded to tell this whole, you know, do this whole speech about perhaps none of you are standing up for gay marriage because none of you know anyone who's the product of one. I said, you know, my mom and dad are married to each other, but if gay marriage was legal, then my parents could be with their true loves. They have partners outside of their relationship and they love each other and have deep admiration, but you know, this would allow my family to be recognized. And I got a standing ovation and the bill passed. It was so great, and I marched back to my seat. And okay, so the punchline is my parents aren't gay, but I was trying to make a statement, which I did, and 2 days later the bus pulls back into my school parking lot, and this is way before cell phones and everything. I get into the car and my parents picked me up and said, how was your trip? I said, oh, it was so great. And they said, by any chance, did you happen to tell anyone who we were gay? And I said, actually, I did. They're like, that's so awesome. I said, wait, hold on. How do you know? And they said, well, someone from your school called on the payphone, called his mother, called this person who called your aunt, who called me to say, was there something that I needed to tell them?
Oh my That's so funny.
So, I mean, I kind of have always been raised, you know, I like to say my mantra is be provocative with a purpose, though. It's never going to be gratuitous, but I have no problem, you know, creating a stir if I think it's going to serve the greater good.
I love it. It's serving the greater good.
Well, thank you.
What are you doing on like a day-to-day basis now?
Well, I teach, so I run around Manhattan, Brooklyn, teaching. I travel for lectures, so I was in Ann Arbor, I was in Georgia. You know, I'm here today. So,
do you feel like when you tell someone what you do for a living, someone's always got some sort of sexual question?
Well, it is rare that I tell people what I do on an airplane.
Oh yeah, you'd be done. Forget it. You're screwed.
I mean, sometimes I just want to read my book.
Yeah.
So there is that. But I did this wild show called Married at First Sight for a few seasons. So if anyone has watched that, then it tends to lead to questions about couples and.
Oh, why does that sound really familiar? Is that why you were on the Today Show? No.
No, I was just talking in general about sex and relationships. But it was a social experiment where 4 social scientists arranged blind matches and they got married when they met.
It can't possibly have worked out.
So I was on for 3 seasons. So 2 of our couples from our first season are still together. It's
Get
been
out of
almost
here.
2.5 years.
Wow.
The rest sort of crashed and burned.
I have no doubt.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised by that at all.
Yeah. Well, you know, look, the pool of people who want to marry a stranger on unscripted television is not representative of like the world at large.
Good point.
But you know what? It gave people an unbelievable look at what a real partnership means, and that you can't phone it in, and you have to work, and you have to push past discomfort.
But with any relationship.
And own your stuff, which people don't really like to do.
Right. But that's true of any relationship.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. But I think that, you know, when you see it highlighted in someone else in such an extreme way, it holds the mirror up to your life, and you look at it and say, uh-oh.
Look, it's hard. It's really, really hard. It's a lot of work. And I hear tons of guys usually tell me, like, our species wasn't made to be with one person. Like, if we could go out and have an affair, I want to stay with my wife for the rest of my life. She's my best friend, my love, my everything. But if I could just go have an affair and come back and be fine with it, I'll be with her forever. And I think the sex and the love gets really tangled and confusing.
Well, I don't think that the default setting for all of us is monogamy. I mean, I think that's how we created this world, to make things easy and orderly. But is it right for everyone? Absolutely not.
But what are the options?
Well, I mean, there are plenty of people who have, you know, really good, solid, open, poly relationships. Bless you. But those relationships take work too, and consent and boundary setting, and I mean, there's a lot to be learned from those partnerships that work out really well. Most people can't do it because the sex and the love part get interchanged, and we get jealous, and we don't know how to. Most people don't know how to separate the two.
Right. And do you find that men have an easier time than women?
I think that's the stereotype. That's sort of always been the stereotype, and we really haven't given room for a lot of women to come out and say, look, you know, I can appreciate having a physical relationship with someone and not have it be emotional and rely on one person for that emotional connection, or many people. But, you know, when slut shaming is something that's in our world every single day, we're not really leaving room for women to come out and talk like that.
Speaking of which, are you following the election?
How could I not be following the election?
I mean, it's rich. It's
terrifying.
It's entertaining.
Yes. I mean, it makes my job challenging is not the right word, but it gives me an opportunity in classrooms to talk about slang words and consent, and have some really great conversations about what it means to be a good person and good partner. You know, like when grabbing pussy shows up on your front page news, that's, you know, it's time to talk. And I really am a big believer that we use every opportunity available to us to talk. So, you know, I read something that some parents wanted to, like, go after the FCC for this comment, for all the footage that was being aired all the time. And my comment is, that is such a rich opportunity for you to talk to your children about consent and about what your expectations are. And, you know, if someone ever spoke to you that way,
but as someone who plays in this space, lives in this space every day, does it blow your mind that we have one candidate who's being accused by almost 11 different women and then you have another candidate whose husband was accused by almost 11, and these are the two people who are...
It is sort of shocking. I tend to not... I'm trying to think of the right word. I mean, it is what we're left with at this point, right?
Correct.
And so the question is, what does it mean for us? And it means that we really need to start talking about accountability and what it means to speak up for yourself and own your voice and body. I mean, look, Bill Clinton is certainly far from perfect, but he's not running now. I'm concerned with what's going on right this minute. And just the misogyny. I mean, look, I have kids who live in New York City and look at the world through rainbow-colored glasses and are so horrified by what they see every day. Mostly because this doesn't seem like a policy-driven election.
Because it's not.
And that's honestly what everyone should be upset about. That it isn't about policy. It's sort of it's a reality show circus, and that's just sad.
Yeah, they get up and play defense every single day, or at least he does.
Yeah.
But I would imagine it's giving you a lot to talk about.
It does. It gives me a lot to talk about. And quite honestly, I feel like it's made our world so toxic. It's also hard to be. I mean, I can't say it's harder to be me than anyone else, but for me, I get so frustrated opening my computer every day that it colors everything I do the rest of the day. To see it and to engage in it, and look, when you talk about sex and sexuality in the media, you get a lot of like fun people writing nasty things about you, commenting stuff, which look, goes with the territory. But I feel like our next generation of this new generation of young people is so much more thoughtful and open and diverse and welcoming. I just wish they would grow up really quickly. I mean, not that I want my kids to grow up so fast, but I would like their values to come of age.
Are people commenting?
Well, Marcy said that she actually watched Love at First Sight.
Oh, of course. Was it on Bravo or TLC?
It was
or
on A&E and
A&E.
yeah.
Marcy's
FYI,
cornered the market on that. That and the Vanderpump Rules. She's like obsessed with.
Look, the good thing about reality TV is it allows all of us to be a voyeur and sort of, look in and.
Are you kidding? Look how successful it is. They wouldn't keep doing it if it wasn't so successful.
No, for sure.
Where does your husband fall in all this? Loves it, loves what you do, loves to talk about it?
We've been together for 21 years now.
Wow.
We were basically kids.
So you met at age 3.
Yeah, yes. Older than that. But, he's never known me without this.
Yeah.
So he understands, he appreciates it. I mean, he loves what I do. I mean, he gets frustrated when I do with, some of the more conservative talk shows and things that I've done. But, he knows that's, this is my thing. So he's super supportive of it.
What is the average age teenagers are losing their virginity now? Has that changed?
Not really.
Get out of here.
No, that's the funny thing. It's for both boys and girls, so we're talking about, intercourse, roughly before the 17th birthday for both.
That seems appropriate.
Yeah. And I think we tend to forget how important sexuality is to our development as adolescents. I think the further we get from it, we forget how powerful those feelings were and overwhelming, and we tend to sort of try and tamp them out and say, oh, don't worry, you'll get past it.
Yeah.
And, I remember the boombox sitting next to me and the sobbing for hours and hours on end. I just ran into my first, crush with his whole family outside of Temple Green last week, and I thought all the flood of the feelings and the trying to call into WPLJ to place the song.
Yes, yeah, I did that too with Light FM. I placed, and then I was up at school and I did the same thing.
Yeah.
Ugh, we're so tortured, Logan. So tortured.
And they're tortured too. That's the thing. They're still tortured. So it's about us supporting those feelings and teaching them how to make good decisions. Because we do this thing as parents and caregivers a lot, where we send the wait until you're ready to, and whatever behavior it is, fill in the blank. But we say wait until you're ready. What does that mean? Well, that's the problem. I can look at a class of a lecture of 100 young people, and I'll say, how many of you have been told to wait to have sex, whatever that means, until you're ready? They'll all raise their hand. And then I'll say, how many of you have been told what it means to be ready, or how to evaluate what it means to be ready? And 2 people raise their hand.
What's the answer?
Well, first of all, readiness differs from one person to the next. But I think readiness is about, first of all, it has to be something that you want. You know, you have to understand your own body, know that your body is capable of pleasure. You have to be willing and ready to, you know, negotiate certain behaviors, to buy protection, use protection, all of those things. You know, if you can't walk into a drugstore, it's probably not a great sign. And then there's also the quality of your relationship, right? I mean, if you can't talk about your needs and protection and consent and where you think this relationship is going to go, whether or not you want it to, you know, just go on for a night or for, you know, eternity, those are all measures of readiness.
And then you have to wrap your head around the fact that it's never going to be the most memorable, wonderful experience of your life.
No.
No, it's a shit show.
No, it's not up there with the greatest experience.
Not even close. Mine was a disaster. I hated it.
But I often wonder if some of that also doesn't come from the fact that women in particular aren't really encouraged to understand their own body and to know that their body has a capacity for pleasure regardless of someone else, right? Okay. Many people grow up saying, like, there's a switch that turns when you have an experience with someone else as if the other person makes you sexual and you're supposed to feel pleasure and orgasms and bells and whistles, and most people go,
not so much.
Not so much.
I don't know anyone who absolutely had the best first experience.
Well, and then we look at TV and movies and say, that's what it's supposed to be like, so maybe there's something wrong with me.
Right.
Or we look at the person next to us and say, no, maybe there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, seriously.
Right? Instead of recognizing that we're just, the lens through which we look at sex and pleasure is often male, and we don't respond like that.
Are there any movies that you recommend parents watch with their kids, show their kids? I mean, not like...
Also, have you watched Diner?
Oh, I mean, not recently, but yes.
You've seen that.
Oh, yes.
God, I haven't seen Diner. I have to see Diner. I was told it's on my list of movies to see.
Yes. An oldie but goodie, Diner.
Yeah.
You know, well, by the way, I'm only laughing because my almost 12-year-old son told me he really wants to see Neighbors too. Well, I haven't seen it either, but apparently he's not seeing Neighbors too. Like, mostly because I feel like the entire time I'd have to say, stop. Do you understand that? Do you know what that means? Do you know an 8-ball is not what you think an 8-ball is?
You must be like, oh, Mom! Honestly.
No, the best is he's so good and mushy and sweet, but you know, but he'd be the one like teaching everyone else after. Do you know that part when his face said?
You guys know what an 8-ball is? That's really funny. I'm learning a lot. I feel motivated to go down and call it a vagina to my 3-year-old and not whatever it is. A vulva.
Vulva. Clitoris.
The whole thing.
Vagina inside.
Mulva. Mulva. Dolores.
Right. Or you can just show the Seinfeld episode.
I could show that. They have the attention span of like that table. They would never get through it. But I should do that. I should be far more open with my kids. What else do I need to do?
Well, I don't think there's a should. I think you have an opportunity to if you want to.
Okay.
Right? I'm not like the shaming parent, but I do think there's always an opportunity. I mean, yes, we have a responsibility as parents to create a sexually healthy next generation, but we also just have an opportunity to do things differently and better and use what we learned and teach someone else how to make better decisions than we did. And recognizing that our kids are going to screw up, right? I think back to my decisions, and I am so happy there wasn't Facebook and a cell phone.
I say the same thing all the time. What I could have done or would have done stupidly on social media. Really?
Yeah, no, terrible. And in fact, with my teen students, I'll tell them all the time, I know that you guys think that your computers and your iPhones are, you know, represent freedom to you, but they're like opposite.
It's the opposite. It is. It's the opposite.
You're supposed to make mistakes growing up. You are. You're not supposed to have those mistakes define you for eternity.
Right.
So
we used to take pictures and they would be on rolls of film and some were good and some weren't, and that's what it is. Now we take 100 pictures, we pick the best of those, we Photoshop the best of the best of the best, and then only then do we post it, and then we go through a number of filters before to actually post.
Right. So it hardly represents reality, for sure.
Of course.
And also just in general to, you know, I sort of wanted my private, intimate moments to be private and intimate. Not sure I'd be so cool if someone.
But do your kids agree with you when you say that to them, or is it always an argument?
No, you know, well, my 11-year-old has a phone. My little one does not. Mostly because he was going to baseball practice with a friend by himself, and you know, he needed a little independence. But We made him sign a 17-point contract. It's the greatest thing we ever wrote.
Really?
Oh yeah, everything. But you know, he's also, you know, the kid who always asks permission before he posts something. You know, we've taught about consent and, you know, making sure someone else is okay and not taking pictures of people naked and posting things like that. But you know, it's always good because young people make mistakes. We just wrote up a contract.
And what happens if he breaks it?
Well, then he gets his phone taken away.
Gotcha.
But the truth is,
And how old was he when he got a phone?
11.
And your daughter is
7.
She doesn't have one.
No.
She knows how to use it up, down, left, and right.
Yes.
Okay. Because my 3-year-old completely
yes.
navigates to the phone.
I remember when Memphis was, I think she was 18 months old, and I want to say it was the first iPad, like generation 1.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find her in our, I mean, we live in an apartment. It's not like that big.
Right.
I couldn't find her one day, and I found her sitting, like, in the corner behind a door with Lou's iPad, like, naked, except a diaper, like, and she, like, jimmied the password. It was, like, doing something behind it.
I love it. I love it. That's
It's made for them. They're savvy. I can't figure out how to use it.
You know, I spent the year trying to battle it, and then I'm like, what's the point? They're going to be so far behind if I take it away from them, and they have no technology by the time they start school. So, anyway, this is great. I love this. I love talking to you. You're so engaging.
Well,
you have
thank you.
so much information. I could talk to you forever. I have a to-do list now. The next time you come, we'll bring my 3-year-old here, and we'll point to different parts of the body, and if she gets to a certain area,
No
she can
problem.
use a real word for it.
That's okay. We can bring my kids. They can do a whole little class.
I would love it. I'm sure Harper would love
Like the
Memphis.
valedictorians.
What's that?
The valedictorians of sex ed.
Sexuality, yeah. Yeah, that would be your kids.
You know, by the way, that being said, my kids were the first. They always, people in general, always worry about the kids of the person who talks about sex for a living.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're going to have the kids that tell everyone everything.
Yeah.
But the truth is, they don't. What they do is they are the first to rat out someone if they're doing something that they think is unethical.
Get out of here.
Or they'll correct the information. And
Yeah.
that's our deal. You know, you can't volunteer the information, but you can correct misinformation.
I love it. You wouldn't think it. Lance, you have 6 kids. How do you talk to your kids about sex? Do you?
Well, I speak to my 20-year-olds differently than I speak about it with my kids, and I think over time it's actually changed. So, like last year, even within the last year, like I've had to explain to Booba about like Caitlyn Jenner, right? And so, like when the Kink song comes on, like Lola, you know, it's like, and she asks questions about like what is it mean that she walks like a man, she talks like a man, but she looks like a woman, and all this. So it's really gone, you know, from like over the course of my parenting, it's really gone from a lot of things that you just kept in the closet and issues that, you know, like you would be dealing with. Like AIDS was big during the 90s when my first set of kids were growing up. So now there's just more openness, and I think you encourage them. Like we actually had Regina on. Remember Regina from Stop Abuse? Like we had that child sexual abuse woman on, and you know, through talking to them about things, like you understand that it's very important to be like the kids who are articulate in the language are able to protect themselves more.
Right.
And, you know, it's like, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. So basically, he doesn't talk to his kids at all about sex. I'm just kidding.
I actually no. They're all different. It's really very different when you do that. I don't know that my sons would want me to have the sex conversations live on TV. You know, just there are certain things that they still want to keep private.
Of course.
You know, but it's nice. I think it's nice that there's more openness.
Yeah.
You know, for kids, and I think the most important thing that you could probably have is this, like, no fear of being punished when they talk about something.
Sure.
You know, and so like that actually will protect them more.
Right.
And that makes a huge difference, the perception that they're not going to be judged by their parents, but they're just going to, you know, parents can sit back and listen and say, you know, tell me why you're asking, get some context, and then give an answer as opposed to just assuming the worst.
Yeah.
But having said that, I haven't bought them bananas and condoms.
I can't imagine.
Sex ed is also about skill building, right?
Oh, so it's like you have like a race, like how fast?
Well, no, but you know, but see, here's the thing.
It's like the sex ed Olympics.
Yeah, it could be. It certainly could be. But I want us to take that ugly connotation of condoms. So I mean, condoms are health products like anything else. I don't understand why we make such a big deal about these things.
You don't understand. I was in Ghana when I was doing like my malaria work, and it would literally, you'd stop at a red light and they would throw condoms at you. Like it was just like,
Why?
because they were trying to help stop the spread of AIDS, HIV. And they literally, like, you'd stop at a red light.
That's how my apartment is. When anyone opens
like rains
the door,
condoms?
we rain
Yay!
condoms and vibrators. We just
Yep.
throw things at people.
So it is
straight.
exactly the way I thought
Yes,
it was.
it is.
That's exactly
It
what I
is.
thought.
We had
so
a
the
party
diaphragm
once,
was
and
your
I
favorite
put a
Seinfeld
ball-
episode.
Well, so what are the best brand of condoms while we're talking about it?
You're asking. Well, so I'm on Trojan's board and have been for a long time. So
Trojan Sport.
Trojan's board.
Trojan's
you're on
board.
Trojan's
I'm
board.
on Trojan's board. Yes. So I've worked with them for.
I
Don't
thought that
ask
was a
me.
Trojan
I have
No,
no
that's
idea.
it.
I was going to go out and
Trojan's
buy the Trojan Sport
board.
condom.
You shouldn't be having sex right now.
Bigly.
You've got 6 kids and 3 ex-wives, and you're eating a lot. You just need to calm down for 1 second. Don't make any more kids yet. You have 6 perfect kids.
That's what I was actually talking about, the condoms.
Yeah, you need doubles.
So-
But the great, here's the great thing about condoms now, and people don't talk about them as much, is that there have been tremendous innovations in condoms. You know, thinner latex or polyurethane, other better materials, better loops, textures, shapes. I mean, there's so much good stuff out there. I remember one day I was doing a condom demonstration for one of my high school classes, and Maverick came home, and he was younger. He must have been about 5 or 6.
His name is
and
Maverick?
I have a Maverick in Memphis, and if you watch Difficult People, that's apparently the kids' names in the first episode. I'm like, who do I know that writes that show?
It's really
'Cause
funny.
It's too weird a
Yeah,
coincidence.
really, it is.
I mean, with those names. And I remember him saying to me, like, as I'm swimming in the sea of condoms, and he said, "Are you giving out prizes in class today?" And I said, "No." Well, maybe. And we just talked about it. And he said, "What are they used for?" I said, "Well, condoms are used to prevent the spread of germs from passing back and forth from person to person. You know, it also prevents sperm and egg from meeting." And his comment was, "Cool." That was
Yeah.
it. Like, it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah, you know, if you start talking to kids early as if it's nothing.
My grandparents
It
used to
is.
talk about, like, I didn't even know what they were talking about, but they used, and I think I've mentioned this in the past, but they used to talk about, like, parking the car in the garage. And they always, like, I can remember, like, sitting at the family table, and they would talk about parking the car in the garage, and they've had this, like, inside joke, and they were so happy, and like, I was just like, what's he talking about?
Really funny.
My grandfather, until the day he passed away, used to keep my business card in his pocket, and he would give it out to all of his friends. And one day I remember him saying to me, "Lo, why is it that you'll talk to everyone but not me?" And I said, "I love you so much. I'm so delighted that you are still engaged in an intimate life." I said, "But I feel like I should be that involved."
Right. Not so much me. You, yes. Me, not so much.
It's got to be awkward. I guess, like, you have to draw lines.
I mean, at times. I would say that in general, I know a lot more about the people in my lives than I probably should. But the truth is, I respect everyone's privacy and confidentiality. I will say nothing, unless someone offers. But otherwise, I don't deliberately get involved, only because it's easy to become too entangled in someone else's life. If someone brings it up, it's a whole other issue.
Okay. Anything else I should know about before I embark on sexuality with my kids? That's a weird sentence. That's not what I meant. And sexual education with my kids.
Sexuality education.
Yeah.
I think, and that's the thing. It's taking the word sex out of it. We just make assumptions that talking about sex means you're talking about, like,
Something
positioning.
devious. Right.
And that's such a small part, if any, of someone.
Awesome. I'm
sexual.
excited to go down and give her a bath. That's what I want to do right now. Thank you so much for
You're
hanging
so
out.
welcome.
You're delightful and lovely and great stories. And I love it all. Come back again.
I will.
Show
Thank
us.
you.
Awesome. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
We have some pictures.
Ugh.
Sorry I didn't bring any bananas.
Are you
For the
done? I'm
pictures.
sorry. I'm actually quite pleased. I can't forget it.
We're live still on this camera.
Just take a picture of me.
Sure. I actually think when you were having partner that I got a call from someone about my neck. My neck.
Really?
Yes, but my neck. So
Get out of here.
at least definitely my heartbeat to try.
Oh, my Stephanie called?
Yeah. Well, no, it must be someone through Stephanie.
Yeah. That's really funny.
I mean, yeah, obviously.
Yeah. Oh, still in there.
Smile. All right.
Thank you.
Logan, you're on Instagram, I assume?
Yes.
All right.
It's a small world. All connected. Thank you. Bye.
Yes. Of course.
I'm gonna run downstairs.
Okay, no problem.
Take care.
I don't want to grope you.
I think that's what guys feel like afraid now. The hug or the thing is subject to interpretation.
Well, yeah, right now.
Stupid diatrons. Eating habits and carrots.
I mean, I had a piece of cake today that I'm not going to tell you where it's there. I pull it together and try to make it.
Good job. I pull life together in front of my kids. The diet I'm okay with. Focus. I try to explain good things, be a decent mom. Like, try to share. Why? I don't know. Just do it. It seems like the right thing to do.
I know. Well, look, it's practice makes perfect, right? We're closer to perfect.
Something like it.
All right, Jenna, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
You're awesome.
Nice to meet you.
Good
Come
to meet
back.
you.
Take
We'll
care.
hang out.
See ya.
Do it all over again.
Will do.
Thanks a
Enjoy.
lot.